Hey everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today on Let's Get Live with Dracena Wines, we are going to be talking about choosing the right vessel. And by vessel, I am talking about aging and fermenting our wines. So the vessel is really, really important. And actually, every step of the process is important, right? There is that saying of you can't make great wine from, shitty fruit. And that is extremely true, right? You have to start off with quality fruit to get quality wine. And the rest of that saying, which isn't as popular, is but you can make shitty wine from quality grapes, okay? So the reverse is also true. You have to start off with quality wine in order to make, you have to start off with quality fruit in order to make quality wine. But as the winemaker comes in, the winemaker can do stuff to make that quality fruit end up not so great wine. And there's many, many decisions that go on during the winemaking process. So let's start with in the vineyard, right? We have to start off with knowing our soil and knowing what grape varieties grow the best in that soil, right? We have to choose a root stock. We have to choose a variety itself. Once we have that and it's growing, we have to, know when to green drop or when to cut leaves back or when to irrigate, when not to irrigate, because overwatering can be as detrimental as no water, okay? So all of these things come into play in the vineyard. Once we are in the vineyard and the season goes on, now we're talking about harvest time. When do we harvest? How do we harvest? Once we harvest and we bring it to the winery, now there's a whole other slew of decisions we have to make, right? So what type of yeast are we going to use? Are we going to whole cluster or are we going to destem? Are we going to field blend? Are we going to keep each of the clones separate? We can go on and on about those winemaking decisions, and each individual decision changes the final product of the wine that we're going to be consuming. So what we're going to talk about today is actually the choosing the right vessel. So there's loads of different vessels that we can choose, right? We have stainless steel, we have concrete, we have clay, we have oak, and then the decisions within there. So we're going to start off with stainless steel. Okay, so here we have a stainless steel tank, right? The positives of stainless steel. Well, let's start off with the negative. They are expensive, okay? But the positive is once you initially outlay that, well, they're there, right? They're not going anywhere. They're pretty difficult to damage, right? I mean, they could tip over. We've seen them crack open, right? But for the most part, they're indestructible. So once you do that outlay of the money, they're there permanently for you. So that's a positive. The other positive is that if you really have fruit that is so great, you don't want to impart anything else into it, stainless steel is going to help that. Stainless steel is going to allow you to have a fresh wine, a crisp wine, okay? We're not imparting any other aspects into that wine, so that is a benefit of the stainless steel. Also, right, super easy to clean, and you just pretty much climb on in there and clean away. And because it is smooth on the inside, it's pretty easy to clean. So those are all benefits. Now, wines that are made in stainless steel typically are meant to be drunk at an earlier age, right? We're not seeing you lie down wines that are in stainless steel for decades, okay? These are meant to have crisp, fresh fruit wines that are meant to be consumed early, okay? The next thing we have is concrete, okay? So concrete tanks are amazing. So negative, they are expensive, okay? Negative, they can crack, okay? Negative, they can actually, I should say a positive, is that they actually automatically micro-oxygenate the wine. And that's a positive. So we all know oxygen and wine don't go well together. But micro-oxygenation, little bit of oxygen in, is a positive for wine. And concrete tanks do this automatically. They allow that to happen. But now going back to the cleaning aspect of it, these are really, really difficult to clean, all right? Because they are, because they're not really that smooth in there, it's going to be more difficult to clean than a stainless tank. And because they're porous, they do absorb some of the wine itself, right? And now it does impact the wine by giving it kind of a somewhat of a minerally kind of minerally kind of aspect to the wine, right? Now these guys are really, really expensive too, and unlike the stainless steel, these guys can crack, and I've known them to crack. So that is a problem, right? They're expensive on the outside, on the upstart, but then you have to really maintain and be careful about their maintaining so that they don't crack. Now, these tanks are sort of egg-shaped. You also see them in actual rectangles, okay? You can have walls and walls and walls of concrete tanks, but sometimes you see these concrete tanks in an egg shape, and then people call them amphorae. So technically, they are still concrete tanks. They're concrete eggs, because amphorae are not made out of concrete. They're actually made out of clay, right? And they used to be really down in the ground, and we still have them down in the ground, but now we do see them up on top of the ground on, egg stands. All right, so concrete tanks and amphora kind of do the same aspect. The clay is also porous, so it allows for the microoxygenation. It's going to add a texture, and it's going to add some earthiness to the wine itself. So they're similar. It's basically just concrete versus clay. Okay. Now we're going to get into the oak. Okay. So if we decide to use oak, okay, there is an array of decisions that we can make. Okay. So you can choose American oak. You can choose French oak, Hungarian oak, Portuguese. I mean, there's all of these variables out there for the oak. Once you decide on what oak you want, then you can have toastiness of oak, right? So the more toast the oak is going to use, or the more toasting that the oak barrel has, it's going to impart more of that smoke and caramel kind of flavors onto the wine. So American oak is kind of thought to be more aromatic. French oak is more structural. And then Hungarian oak is kind of in the middle. And there are other oaks. Different countries make different oaks. These are just kind of the three main oaks that are used. Okay. Now, here's the thing about oak barrels. Size actually matters. Okay. So basically what's happening is the larger the vessel, the less oak itself is going to be imparted onto the wine. So the larger the barrel, the less effect it's going to have on the wine. The smaller the barrel, the more impact we're going to have on the wine. So the smaller barrel is going to be more oaky, okay? So like Napa cabs, right? They're all using the small barrels. We don't see the large barrels there, right? That's what's imparting that oakiness. So we have different barrel sizes. So this is what most wineries are going to be using. Okay, this is a barrique, and this holds 59, 60 gallons. Okay, this basically gives you about 25 cases of wine. All right, so this is a 60-gallon barrel. Okay, this is what we typically see in a lot of the small wineries, in a lot of Napa, Sonoma, Paso. Okay, this is the most common that we're going to see in these wineries that you typically visit. Okay, then after that we can move on up to a puncheon. Now I know this kind of looks the same because the picture is a little difficult to tell the difference, but this is double the size of a barrique. Okay, so this holds 120 gallons. So this barrel is going to impart about half, not exactly, but about half of its essence onto the wine itself. So we can keep moving on up. And next we have a demi-muid. Okay, this holds 160. Okay, so now I think you can start to see the difference in size. This is a little bit bigger. You can see that the little forklift is under the rack that it is on. Okay, so this is a little bit bigger, 160 gallons. And then we are going to go up to the big guys and the Faudre. So these can hold up to 1,200 gallons. So these are ones like we see in Spain or in France, right? Some of them are this way. They can stand them upright. It depends on what the winery, how the winery has their barrel room set up. These hold 1,200 gallons of wine, and what's happening here is that it's being aged in oak, but it's not being overpowered by oak. Okay. So the larger the barrel, the less that oak is going to be imparted. Okay, so we use these barrels over and over and over again. Okay, and because they're not meant to impart that so much into the wine. Now, additionally, one thing I want to say about any of the barrels is that the longer the wine stays in barrel, the more the oak is going to impart itself onto the wine. So, for example, holding wine in barrel for 1 year, if you taste it, it's going to have a certain element to it. Keeping that same exact wine in the barrel for an additional year, those tannins are going to be broken down a little bit more. You're going to get a little bit more of that vanilla, a little bit more of that smoothness, that oakiness into the wine. So the longer it's in the barrel affects the flavor of the wine, also the size of the barrel is going to affect the flavors of the wine. So these are the most popular vessels that we can use in order to age and ferment our wines. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I hope you enjoyed, maybe learned something, and I will see you next week for another Get Live with Instagram. Sláinte!